A group of police officers humiliate a black doctor named Dr. Brown, creating an embarrassing scene in the middle of a crowded restaurant. But as the truth emerges, a shocking twist turns the tables. What happened on that day that shocked everyone? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Dr. Elijah Brown let out a deep sigh as he finished his final round of patient checks. His eyes were heavy with fatigue, but his heart was full of purpose. The hospital halls echoed with the steady beep of monitors and the soft whispers of nurses changing shifts. Dr. Brown had been on his feet for what felt like forever, his white coat a little rumpled from the long hours. "Just one more chart to sign," he mumbled to himself, rubbing his tired eyes. As he scribbled his signature on the last form, a warm smile spread across his face. Despite the exhaustion, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Every life saved, every patient comforted, it all mattered so much to him. Finally, Dr. Brown hung up his stethoscope and stepped out of the hospital. The bright sunlight made him squint, a stark contrast to the fluorescent lights he'd been under for the past 16 hours. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with fresh air. "I think I deserve a nice meal," he thought to himself. Without much hesitation, Dr. Brown decided to treat himself to lunch at the Silver Spoon, a fancy restaurant just a few blocks away. It wasn't often that he splurged like this, but today felt special. He had worked hard, and a quiet, peaceful meal seemed like the perfect reward. As he walked, his tired legs protested a bit, but the thought of a delicious meal kept him going. The streets were busy with the lunch crowd, but Dr. Brown barely noticed. His mind was still partly at the hospital, thinking about his patients and their families. When he reached the Silver Spoon, the maitre d' greeted him with a polite nod. "Table for one, sir?" "Yes, please," Dr. Brown replied, his voice a little hoarse from giving so many instructions during his shift. As he was led to a cozy corner table, Dr. Brown couldn't help but feel a little out of place. His scrubs were hidden under his coat, but he knew he probably looked as tired as he felt. Still, he settled into the plush chair, ready to enjoy a moment of peace and good food. Dr. Brown settled into his seat, his weary body sinking into the plush cushion. The soft clink of silverware and the gentle murmur of conversation filled the air around him. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the peace that washed over him. When he opened them again, he noticed the pristine white tablecloth before him, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital environment he'd left behind. The waiter approached, a crisp black apron tied neatly around his waist. "Good afternoon, sir. May I offer you our wine list?" the waiter asked, his voice polite, but his eyes flickering over Dr. Brown's attire. Dr. Brown shook his head gently. "Just water, please, and could I see the menu?" As the waiter nodded and walked away, Dr. Brown became aware of the soft whispers and curious glances from nearby tables. A couple to his left peered over their menus, their eyes widening slightly as they took in his appearance. Dr. Brown glanced down at himself, suddenly realizing he was still in his scrubs, the pocket of his white coat bulging with pens and his trusty notepad. He hadn't even thought to change before coming to the restaurant. A small chuckle escaped his lips as he imagined what a sight he must be. The waiter returned with his water and menu, placing them on the table with a practiced flourish. "Are you ready to order, sir?" he asked, his pen poised above his notepad. Dr. Brown's tired eyes scanned the menu, the elegant descriptions blurring slightly. He blinked hard, trying to focus. "I'll have the grilled salmon, please," he said, choosing the first thing that caught his eye. As the waiter walked away, Dr. Brown leaned back in his chair, his eyes heavy with fatigue. The soft lighting of the restaurant cast a warm glow over the room, and the gentle classical music playing in the background soothed his frayed nerves. He found himself thinking about the patients he'd left behind at the hospital. Had the night shift checked on Mrs. Smith's pain levels? Was little Timmy's fever finally breaking? His mind wandered, the weight of responsibility never quite leaving his shoulders even in this moment of respite. The waiter returned to Dr. Brown's table, his expression a mixture of politeness and uncertainty. He glanced at the doctor's scrubs once more before speaking. "Sir, are you sure you wouldn't prefer the bar menu?" the waiter asked, his tone carefully neutral. "It might be more suitable." Dr. Brown looked up, his tired eyes meeting the waiter's. He could sense the man's discomfort, but chose to respond with kindness. "Thank you for your concern, but I'm quite happy with the regular menu," he said softly. The waiter nodded, a slight flush creeping up his neck. "Of course, sir. Do you need a moment to look it over? Or do you already know what you'd like?" Dr. Brown smiled gently. "I think I'm ready to order. I'll have the grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, please." As the waiter jotted down his order, Dr. Brown reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He extracted his credit card and held it out to the waiter. "I'd like to pay now, if that's all right," he said. "I'm quite tired and might doze off after my meal." The waiter's eyebrows rose slightly, but he took the card with a nod. "Certainly, sir. I'll process this right away and bring your meal as soon as it's ready." As the waiter walked away, Dr. Brown leaned back in his chair, feeling the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. He was looking forward to his meal, to the chance to sit quietly and recharge after the long, demanding hours at the hospital. His mind drifted to the patients he'd treated during his shift. The scared young boy with a broken arm, the elderly woman recovering from pneumonia, the new mother cradling her premature baby. Each face, each story, had left its mark on his heart. Dr. Brown closed his eyes for a moment, letting the soft music and gentle chatter of the restaurant wash over him. He was grateful for this moment of peace, this chance to refuel before returning to the important work that awaited him. As Dr. Brown sat quietly at his table, his eyes closed in a moment of peaceful rest, the restaurant manager's gaze fell upon him. The manager, a tall man with graying hair and a crisp suit, frowned as he took in the sight of the doctor in his wrinkled scrubs. The manager's brow furrowed as he watched the waiter return with Dr. Brown's credit card. Something didn't sit right with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this tired-looking man in medical attire seemed out of place in his upscale establishment. Leaning close to the hostess, the manager whispered, "Keep an eye on table 7. Something's not right there." The hostess glanced over, her eyes widening slightly. "The doctor? What do you mean?" The manager shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Are we sure he's really a doctor? Those scrubs could be a costume. And did you see how quickly he handed over that credit card?" As these thoughts swirled in his mind, the manager's suspicion grew. He couldn't help but wonder if the credit card Dr. Brown had used might be stolen. The idea took root, feeding off his preconceived notions and biases. With a deep breath, the manager made a decision. He slipped into his office, closing the door softly behind him. His hand shook slightly as he picked up the phone and dialed the local police station. "Hello," he said in a low voice, glancing through the blinds at Dr. Brown's table. "I'd like to report a possible case of credit card fraud at my restaurant." The manager's heart raced as he gave the details to the officer on the other end of the line. He described Dr. Brown, emphasizing the scrubs and tired appearance, and explained his suspicions about the credit card. As he hung up the phone, the manager felt a mix of emotions. Part of him worried he might be overreacting, but another part felt certain he was doing the right thing. He stepped out of his office, his eyes immediately finding Dr. Brown's table. The peaceful atmosphere of the restaurant was suddenly disrupted by the arrival of 2 police officers. Their presence caused a hush to fall over the dining room as curious patrons watched them make their way through the tables. Officer Johnson, a tall man with broad shoulders, approached Dr. Brown's table with his partner, Officer Martinez, close behind. Dr. Brown had just taken his first bite of his long-awaited meal when he noticed the officers standing beside him. "Excuse me, sir," Officer Johnson said, his voice firm but polite. "We need to ask you a few questions." Dr. Brown looked up, his fork paused midway to his mouth. Confusion flickered across his tired face as he set the utensil down. "Of course, officers. Is everything all right?" Officer Martinez stepped forward, her expression serious. "Sir, we've received a report about possible credit card fraud. Can you please identify yourself?" A look of surprise crossed Dr. Brown's face, but he remained calm. He reached for his wallet, his movements slow and deliberate. "Certainly. I'm Dr. Elijah Brown. I work at Memorial Hospital just down the street." As he handed over his identification, Dr. Brown's mind raced, trying to understand the situation. He could feel the eyes of other diners on him, and a flush of embarrassment crept up his neck. Officer Johnson examined the ID closely, And the credit card you used today, Dr. Brown? Can you confirm it belongs to you? Dr. Brown nodded, reaching once again for his wallet. Yes, of course, here it is. He handed over the card, his hand steady despite the unexpected turn of events. As the officers verified his information, Dr. Brown couldn't help but notice the manager hovering nearby, looking both concerned and slightly guilty. The pieces started to fall into place in Dr. Brown's mind, but he pushed aside the hurt and anger that threatened to surface. Instead, he took a deep breath and addressed the officers calmly. I've just finished a double shift at the hospital. I came here for a quiet lunch before heading home. I assure you everything is in order. The restaurant fell silent as the patrons watched the police interrogate Dr. Brown. The tension in the room was palpable, with diners pausing mid-bite and conversations halting abruptly. All eyes were on the table where Dr. Brown sat, his meal forgotten and growing cold. Dr. Brown, though tired and frustrated, tried to explain his situation calmly. Officers, I understand you're just doing your job, but there's been a misunderstanding. He rubbed his eyes, the exhaustion from his long shift evident in his posture. I've just finished a double shift at Memorial Hospital. I came here for a quiet lunch before heading home. Officer Johnson's expression remained impassive. Sir, we appreciate your cooperation, but we need to verify your claims. Do you have any identification or proof of your profession? Dr. Brown nodded, reaching into his pocket with a weary sigh. He pulled out his hospital ID badge and handed it to the officer. Here's my hospital ID. I'm the Chief of Emergency Medicine at Memorial. Officer Martinez took the badge, examining it closely. This looks legitimate, but we'll need to confirm with the hospital. She turned to her partner. I'll make the call. As Officer Martinez stepped away to verify Dr. Brown's employment, the doctor couldn't help but notice the stares from other diners. Some looked sympathetic while others seemed judgmental. The weight of their gazes made him feel small and out of place in his scrubs. Dr. Brown took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. He looked up at Officer Johnson, his eyes reflecting a mix of hurt and determination. Officer, I've dedicated my life to saving others. I've spent the last 16 hours treating patients, some of whom were fighting for their lives. All I wanted was a quiet meal before going home to my family. The sincerity in Dr. Brown's voice seemed to soften Officer Johnson's demeanor slightly, but he remained professional. I understand, sir. We're just following up on a report we received. Once we verify your information, we'll be on our way. As they waited for Officer Martinez to return, Dr. Brown couldn't help but wonder what had prompted this investigation. His gaze drifted to the restaurant manager, who was hovering nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable. The realization dawned on him, bringing with it a wave of sadness and disappointment. Dr. Brown's heart sank as the police continued to press him, despite the evidence he had provided. Officer Johnson held the doctor's ID and medical credentials in his hand, frowning as he scrutinized them. These look authentic, but we still need to verify them with the hospital, Officer Johnson said, his voice firm. We can't be too careful these days. Dr. Brown closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady himself. When he opened them, he saw the other diners watching the scene unfold. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed to be caught staring, while others whispered to their companions, their eyes darting between the police and the tired doctor. An elderly woman at a nearby table leaned towards her husband, her voice carrying in the tense silence. Harold, this doesn't seem right. Look at the poor man. He's clearly exhausted. Harold nodded, his brow furrowed with concern. I agree, dear. It seems a bit excessive, doesn't it? As the murmurs grew louder, more diners began to voice their discomfort with the situation. A young couple exchanged worried glances before the woman spoke up hesitantly. Excuse me, officers, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Is all this really necessary? The gentleman has shown you his ID and everything. Officer Johnson turned to address the woman, his expression stern. Ma'am, we're just following protocol. Please let us do our job. The restaurant manager, who had been hovering nearby, looked increasingly uncomfortable. He wrung his hands nervously, glancing between Dr. Brown and the officers. Dr. Brown, feeling a mix of frustration and humiliation, spoke up again. Officers, I understand you're doing your job, but this is becoming ridiculous. I've shown you my credentials and I've cooperated fully. How much longer do you need to keep me here?" As he spoke, more diners began to nod in agreement. The atmosphere in the restaurant grew tense, with people shifting in their seats and exchanging uneasy glances. Some began to pull out their phones, unsure whether they should intervene or document the situation. The tension in the restaurant reached a fever pitch as Dr. Brown and the police officers continued their standoff. Just as it seemed the situation might escalate further, the restaurant manager came rushing towards them, his face flushed and his eyes wide with panic. Wait, please," the manager called out, waving a credit card in his hand. He skidded to a stop next to the officers, panting heavily. "There's been a terrible mistake." All eyes in the restaurant turned to the manager as he caught his breath. Dr. Brown looked at him with a mixture of confusion and hope, while the officers exchanged glances. "What's going on?" Officer Johnson asked, his brow furrowed. The manager's face reddened even more as he explained, We accidentally swapped Dr. Brown's card with another patron's. It was a mix-up at the register. I'm so sorry, Dr. Brown. This is entirely our fault." A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. The police officers' faces fell as they realized their error. Officer Johnson immediately lowered his stern demeanor, his shoulders slumping with embarrassment. "Dr. Brown," he said, his voice now soft and apologetic, "I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. We were just responding to a call, but clearly, we should have investigated more thoroughly before confronting you like this." The other officer nodded vigorously, adding, "Yes, sir. We're truly sorry for the inconvenience and any distress we may have caused you." Dr. Brown closed his eyes for a moment, relief washing over him. When he opened them, he saw the shame and regret on the faces of both the officers and the restaurant staff. The other diners watched the scene unfold, many of them shaking their heads in disbelief at the situation. The manager stepped forward, holding out Dr. Brown's credit card with trembling hands. "Dr. Brown, please accept our deepest apologies. Your meal today is, of course, on the house, and we would be honored if you would consider dining with us again in the future as our guest." The police officers stood before Dr. Brown, their faces etched with shame and regret. Officer Johnson cleared his throat, his voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Brown, we can't apologize enough for this terrible mistake. We should have handled this situation much differently." Dr. Brown took a deep breath, his exhaustion from the long shift at the hospital now compounded by this ordeal. He looked at the officers, his eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and understanding. "I appreciate your apology," he said softly, "but I hope you understand how this kind of situation can affect people, especially those who face prejudice regularly." The restaurant had fallen completely silent, every patron hanging on Dr. Brown's words. Some looked down at their plates, unable to meet his gaze, while others nodded in agreement. Officer Martinez stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "You're absolutely right, Dr. Brown. We failed you today, and we failed in our duty to protect and serve all members of our community equally. We will use this as a learning experience to do better in the future." Dr. Brown nodded, his posture relaxing slightly. "That's all I can ask for," he replied. "We all have room to grow and learn from our mistakes." The restaurant manager, still red-faced with embarrassment, approached the table once more. "Dr. Brown, please allow us to make this right. Your meal today is complimentary, and we'd be honored if you'd return as our guest in the future." Dr. Brown managed a small smile. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate the gesture." As the police officers prepared to leave, murmurs began to ripple through the restaurant. Patrons exchanged glances, many of them looking ashamed for their initial judgments or for not speaking up sooner. An elderly woman at a nearby table stood up, her eyes glistening with tears. "Dr. Brown," she called out, her voice quavering. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Thank you for your grace and for the work you do. We're lucky to have doctors like you in our community." Her words seemed to break the tension in the room. Suddenly, applause erupted from various corners of the restaurant. It started softly but quickly grew, filling the space with a heartfelt show of support for Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown sat quietly at his table, the earlier excitement of the restaurant now replaced by a heavy silence. He looked down at his half-eaten meal, his appetite lost in the wake of the humiliating experience. With a soft sigh, he pushed the plate away and signaled for the check. As he waited, Dr. Brown's mind raced, replaying the events that had unfolded. The initial shock of being approached by the police, the feeling of all eyes on him as he tried to explain himself, and the mixture of relief and lingering hurt when the misunderstanding was finally cleared up. Each moment stung, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth that no amount of expensive cuisine could wash away. Settling his bill, Dr. Brown stood up, his shoulders slightly slumped under the weight of the day's events. He made his way to the exit, feeling the eyes of the other patrons following him. Some offered sympathetic smiles, while others quickly averted their gaze, perhaps out of shame or discomfort. As he stepped out into the cool afternoon air, Dr. Brown took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind. The familiar sounds of the city surrounded him, but he felt oddly detached from it all. He began to walk, his feet moving almost on autopilot as his thoughts churned. With each step, Dr. Brown felt a familiar determination rising within him. This wasn't the first time he had faced prejudice, and he knew it likely wouldn't be the last. But as he walked, a plan began to form in his mind. He couldn't change what had happened, but maybe, just maybe, he could use this experience to make a difference. Dr. Brown's pace quickened as his resolve strengthened. He would turn this negative experience into something positive. He would address the underlying issues of bias and prejudice that had led to this incident. It wouldn't be easy, but Dr. Brown knew that change never was. As he walked, ideas began to flow. Perhaps he could organize sensitivity training sessions at the hospital, or reach out to local schools to speak about diversity and inclusion. Maybe he could even work with the police department to improve their approach to similar situations. Dr. Brown returned to the hospital, his steps heavy but purposeful. As he walked through the familiar corridors, the sterile smell of disinfectant and the steady beep of medical equipment grounded him. Despite the lingering ache in his heart from the restaurant incident, he knew his patients needed him to be fully present. He made his rounds, checking on each patient with the same care and attention he always provided. To the elderly man recovering from heart surgery, he offered a reassuring smile. To the young mother battling cancer, he gave words of encouragement. His dedication to his work never wavered, even as his mind occasionally drifted back to the humiliating experience he'd endured. As the day wore on, Dr. Brown found himself in need of a friendly ear. During a brief lull in his shift, he sought out his colleague and close friend, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. He found her in the doctor's lounge, sipping a cup of coffee. "Sarah, do you have a moment?" Dr. Brown asked, his voice tinged with weariness. Dr. Mitchell looked up, concern immediately crossing her face. "Of course, Elijah. What's wrong?" Dr. Brown sank into the chair across from her, his shoulders slumping slightly. He recounted the events at the restaurant, his voice low and measured, but Sarah could hear the pain and frustration underneath. "I just can't shake it, Sarah," he confessed, running a hand over his face. "I've faced discrimination before, but it hit differently, and now I can't stop thinking about how to turn this into something meaningful." Sarah reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Elijah. It's not right, and it's not fair." Dr. Brown nodded, grateful for her support. "I keep thinking about all the others who might have faced similar situations. I want to do something, Sarah. I want to make a change." "What are you thinking?" Sarah asked, her eyes reflecting her genuine interest and concern. Dr. Brown leaned forward, his voice gaining strength as he shared his developing ideas. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm considering organizing sensitivity training here at the hospital. Maybe reaching out to local schools talking about diversity and inclusion. I even thought about working with the police department, helping them improve their approach in situations like mine." Sarah's face lit up with admiration. "Elijah, those are wonderful ideas. You've always had a way of turning challenges into opportunities for growth. How can I help?" Dr. Brown's eyes lit up as he listened to Sarah's offer of support. Her words seemed to breathe new life into him, rekindling the spark of hope that had been dimmed by the day's events. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "Your support means more than you know." Together, they began to brainstorm, their minds working in tandem as they explored various possibilities. Ideas flowed freely between them, each one building on the last. Suddenly, Dr. Brown sat up straighter, a look of inspiration crossing his face. "What if we hosted a free health clinic?" he suggested, his voice gaining enthusiasm. Sarah leaned in, intrigued. "Go on," she encouraged. "We could hold it at the restaurant," Dr. Brown continued, his words coming faster now. "It would be a way to bring the community together to provide much-needed medical services and to raise awareness about prejudice and bias." Sarah's eyes widened with excitement. "Elijah, that's brilliant. We could offer basic checkups, health screenings, maybe even vaccinations." Dr. Brown nodded eagerly. "Exactly, and we could invite other healthcare professionals, create a diverse team that represents our community." As they continued to discuss the idea, the concept began to take shape. They envisioned a day where the restaurant, once the site of humiliation, would be transformed into a place of healing and unity. "We could reach out to local community leaders," Sarah suggested. "Get them involved, make it a true community event." Dr. Brown agreed, his earlier weariness now replaced by a sense of purpose. "And we could use this as an opportunity to start conversations about bias and prejudice in healthcare and beyond." As they talked, their excitement grew. What had started as a painful experience was blossoming into an opportunity for positive change. The free health clinic at the restaurant would not only provide essential medical services, but also serve as a bridge between different parts of the community. Dr. Brown took a deep breath as he dialed the number for the restaurant. His heart raced with a mix of nervousness and determination. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. "Hello, this is Harold Thompson of Thompson's Fine Dining. How can I help you?" Dr. Brown cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson, this is Dr. Elijah Brown. I was a patron at your restaurant recently and, well, there was an incident." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, Dr. Brown. Yes, I remember. How can I assist you?" Dr. Brown could hear the unease in Mr. Thompson's voice. He pressed on, his own voice steady and calm. "Mr. Thompson, I have a proposal I'd like to discuss with you. It's about turning that unfortunate event into something positive for our community." Mr. Thompson listened intently as Dr. Brown explained his idea for the free health clinic. As the doctor spoke, the restaurant owner's initial surprise gave way to genuine interest. "A health clinic? Here at the restaurant?" Mr. Thompson asked, his tone a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Yes, sir," Dr. Brown replied. "We'd like to offer free basic health services to the community. It would be a way to bring people together and promote understanding." There was a long pause. Dr. Brown held his breath, waiting for a response. Finally, Mr. Thompson spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Brown, I don't know what to say. What happened that day, it weighs heavily on my conscience. I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for the way you were treated." Dr. Brown felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected such a heartfelt apology. Mr. Thompson continued, his voice growing stronger. "Your proposal? It's more than generous. It's inspiring. Of course, we'll host your clinic. It's the least we can do to make amends." Relief and joy washed over Dr. Brown. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. This means a lot." "No, Dr. Brown, thank you," Mr. Thompson replied. "You're turning a terrible mistake into an opportunity to help others. It's admirable." As they discussed the details, Dr. Brown could sense a shift in Mr. Thompson's attitude. The man's initial defensiveness had melted away, replaced by genuine enthusiasm for the project. With Mr. Thompson's approval secured, Dr. Brown felt a surge of excitement and purpose. He immediately called Dr. Mitchell to share the good news. "Sarah," he said. "Yes," Dr. Brown exclaimed, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "That's wonderful, Elijah," Dr. Mitchell replied. "Let's get to work." Over the next few days, Dr. Brown and Dr. Mitchell threw themselves into organizing the clinic. They reached out to their colleagues at the hospital, explaining the situation and asking for volunteers. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many doctors and nurses eager to help. Dr. Brown contacted local medical supply companies, securing donations of basic equipment and medications. He was touched by the generosity of those he spoke with, many of whom offered their support without hesitation. As word of the event spread, the local community began to take notice. People started calling the hospital and the restaurant asking for more information. Many expressed their interest in attending, some even offering to volunteer their time. Mr. Thompson, true to his word, went above and beyond in his efforts to support the clinic. He offered to provide free refreshments for all attendees and volunteers, and even reached out to his suppliers for additional donations. The event was scheduled for the following weekend. As the day approached, Dr. Brown found himself filled with a mix of nervousness and excitement. He hoped that this clinic would not only provide much-needed medical care, but also serve as a step towards greater understanding and unity in the community. Dr. Mitchell noticed the pensive look on her colleague's face as they finalized the details. "Elijah," she said gently, "what you're doing here? It's really special. You're turning a painful experience into something beautiful." Dr. Brown smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "Thank you, Sarah. I couldn't have done this without your support." As the week progressed, the excitement continued to build. Posters were put up around town, and local news outlets began to cover the story. The community's response was heartening, with many people expressing their admiration for Dr. Brown's initiative. On the day of the clinic, the atmosphere in the restaurant was completely transformed. Dr. Brown arrived early to help set up, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The usually elegant dining room now bustled with activity as volunteers arranged chairs, tables, and medical equipment. Mr. Thompson greeted Dr. Brown warmly, his eyes filled with genuine respect. "Dr. Brown, we're honored to host this event. My staff and I are here to help in any way we can." Dr. Brown nodded gratefully, touched by the sincerity in Mr. Thompson's voice. As he began organizing the medical supplies, he noticed the restaurant staff working diligently alongside the volunteers. Their eagerness to assist was palpable, each of them clearly determined to make the event a success. As the clock struck 9, the doors opened and the first patients began to arrive. Dr. Brown watched as people from all walks of life entered the restaurant, some looking nervous, others curious. A young mother with 2 small children caught his eye, reminding him of why he had chosen this path in life. Dr. Brown approached the family with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said softly, kneeling to be at eye level with the children. "I'm Dr. Brown. Are you here for a checkup today?" The little girl nodded shyly while her brother hid behind their mother's legs. The mother looked at Dr. Brown with grateful eyes. "Thank you for doing this, doctor. We don't have insurance, and I've been worried about their coughs." Dr. Brown felt a lump form in his throat. This was why he became a doctor, to help people, to make a difference. The incident at the restaurant seemed far away now, overshadowed by the opportunity to serve his community. As more people filed in, Dr. Brown saw his colleagues from the hospital greeting patients with the same warmth and care. Dr. Mitchell caught his eye from across the room and gave him a thumbs up. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of purpose and compassion that was almost tangible. As the clinic got into full swing, 2 familiar faces appeared at the entrance. Officers Johnson and Martinez, the policemen who had been involved in the incident at the restaurant, arrived on the scene. They had been assigned to assist with crowd control for the event, unaware of who was organizing it. The moment they stepped inside, their eyes widened in surprise. There, at the center of it all, was Dr. Brown, the very man they had wrongfully accused just days ago. He was moving from patient to patient, his face radiating warmth and compassion as he tended to each person's needs. Officer Johnson nudged his partner. "Is that?" he whispered, his voice trailing off. Officer Martinez nodded, a look of shame crossing his face. "Yeah, it's him. Dr. Brown." They watched as Dr. Brown knelt beside an elderly woman, gently checking her blood pressure. His kindness was evident in every gesture, every word he spoke. The officers couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and regret washing over them. "I can't believe he's doing all this," Officer Johnson murmured. "After what we put him through." Officer Martinez shook his head in disbelief. "Look at him. He's not just doing his job. He really cares about these people." As they observed Dr. Brown's interactions with the patients, the officers were struck by his unwavering dedication. Despite the humiliation he had faced, here he was, pouring his heart into serving the very community where he had been mistreated. The realization of Dr. Brown's grace and commitment in the face of adversity hit them hard. They exchanged glances, both feeling a deep sense of remorse for their part in the earlier incident. "We should apologize again," Officer Martinez suggested, his voice heavy with guilt. Officer Johnson nodded in agreement. "Yeah, we should, but look at him now. He's turned that whole mess into this." He gestured at the bustling clinic around them. As they watched Dr. Brown continue his work, the officers felt a newfound respect for the doctor growing within them. His ability to rise above the injustice he had faced and channel it into something positive was truly inspiring. As the day progressed, Dr. Brown worked tirelessly, moving from patient to patient with unwavering dedication. His gentle touch and kind words brought comfort to those he treated, regardless of their background or circumstances. The makeshift clinic buzzed with activity, a testament to the community's need for accessible healthcare. Throughout the day, countless patients expressed their heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Brown. An elderly man with arthritis clasped the doctor's hand, his eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, Doc. You've no idea what this means to us." A young mother, cradling her feverish child, smiled warmly at Dr. Brown. "God bless you for doing this," she said softly. "We couldn't afford to see a doctor otherwise." As Officers Johnson and Martinez observed the scene, they couldn't help but be moved by the outpouring of appreciation for Dr. Brown. They watched as he treated each patient with the same level of care and respect, regardless of their appearance or social status. The impact of their earlier actions began to weigh heavily on the officers' consciences. They saw firsthand how their biases had led them to misjudge a man who was clearly dedicated to serving others. Officer Johnson leaned against the wall, shaking his head. "We really messed up, didn't we?" he said quietly to his partner. Officer Martinez nodded, his eyes fixed on Dr. Brown as he listened intently to an elderly patient's concerns. "Yeah, we did. Look at him. He's making a real difference here, and we almost—" Their words trailed off as they continued to watch Dr. Brown work. The doctor's unwavering commitment to his patients, despite the injustice he had faced, was a powerful reminder of the consequences of their biased actions. As the day wore on, the officers found themselves reflecting deeply on their own prejudices and how those biases had influenced their behavior. They began to understand the far-reaching effects of their actions, not just on Dr. Brown, but on the entire community that relied on his care and compassion. As the clinic began to wind down, Officer Johnson found himself drawn to Dr. Brown. The doctor was taking a rare moment of rest, sipping water from a paper cup and wiping his brow. Officer Wilson approached hesitantly, his heart heavy with remorse. "Dr. Brown?" he said softly. "Do you have a moment?" Dr. Brown looked up, recognition flickering in his tired eyes. He nodded, gesturing to an empty chair nearby. Officer Johnson sat down, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I wanted to apologize," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "What happened at the restaurant? It was inexcusable." Dr. Brown remained silent, his gaze steady as he listened to the officer's words. "Seeing you here today, helping all these people, it's made me realize how wrong we were," Officer Johnson continued. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since that day, and I'm ashamed of how I acted. My own biases. They clouded my judgment." The officer's voice cracked slightly as he spoke, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know an apology doesn't fix what happened, but I want you to know how sorry I am, and how much I admire what you're doing here." Dr. Brown took a deep breath, his expression softening. "Thank you for saying that, Officer Wilson," he said quietly. "It means a lot to hear you acknowledge what happened." The two men sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared experience hanging between them. Then Dr. Brown spoke again, his voice gentle but firm. "What happened that day was painful," he said. "But seeing you here today, admitting your mistakes and trying to do better, that gives me hope. It's a start towards healing and understanding." Officer Johnson nodded, wiping his eyes. "I want to do better," he said earnestly. "I don't want my biases to hurt anyone else like they hurt you." Dr. Brown reached out and placed a hand on the officer's shoulder. "That's all any of us can do," he said. "Recognize our mistakes, learn from them, and strive to be better." As the clinic drew to a close, the bustling atmosphere began to settle. Patients were saying their goodbyes, and volunteers were tidying up the makeshift medical stations. The day had been a resounding success, with countless community members receiving much-needed medical care. Mr. Thompson, the restaurant owner, made his way to the small stage that had been set up for announcements. His face was a mix of nervousness and determination as he tapped the microphone, drawing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice slightly shaky, "I want to thank you all for coming today, but more importantly, I need to address something." The room fell silent, all eyes on Mr. Thompson. He took a deep breath before continuing. "A few weeks ago, a terrible incident occurred in this very restaurant. Dr. Elijah Brown, the man who organized this incredible clinic, was wrongly accused and humiliated here." Mr. Thompson's voice cracked with emotion. "I want to publicly apologize for what happened that day. Dr. Brown, I am truly sorry for the pain and embarrassment we caused you." Dr. Brown, standing near the back of the room, nodded solemnly at Mr. Thompson's words. "What Dr. Brown has done today, turning that hurtful experience into something so positive for our community, is nothing short of inspirational," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice growing stronger. "It's made me realize that we need to do better. I pledge to you all that from this day forward, this restaurant will be a place of inclusivity and respect for everyone who walks through our doors." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Mr. Thompson smiled, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "And to ensure we continue on this path, I'm proud to announce that we will be hosting this clinic annually. It's the least we can do to give back to our community and to honor Dr. Brown's incredible work." The room erupted in applause, with many people turning to Dr. Brown with looks of admiration and gratitude. Dr. Brown stood there, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, a small smile playing on his lips as he absorbed the impact of Mr. Thompson's words. As the last patient left with a smile and a heartfelt thank you, Dr. Brown felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. But it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from a day well spent in service of others. He looked around the restaurant, now transformed back from a bustling clinic to its usual dining setup, and couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. The police officers who had been helping with crowd control throughout the day approached Dr. Brown. Officer Wilson, who had earlier apologized, spoke up. "Dr. Brown, what you've done here today, it's really opened our eyes. We can't thank you enough for turning such a negative experience into something so positive for the whole community." Dr. Brown nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "Thank you, officers. I hope we can all learn and grow from this experience." Nearby, the restaurant staff were chatting animatedly as they cleaned up. One of the waiters, who had been skeptical of Dr. Brown during the incident weeks ago, approached him hesitantly. "Dr. Brown," the waiter said, his voice filled with remorse, "I wanted to apologize for how I treated you before. Seeing you today helping so many people, it's made me realize how wrong I was to judge you based on appearance." Dr. Brown placed a comforting hand on the waiter's shoulder. "Thank you for saying that. It takes courage to admit our mistakes. Let's move forward together." As the last of the volunteers and community members filed out, there was a palpable sense of unity in the air. People from all walks of life had come together, not just to receive medical care, but to witness and be part of a powerful demonstration of forgiveness and community spirit. Dr. Sarah Mitchell approached Dr. Brown, beaming with pride. "Elijah, you've done something truly remarkable here. I think we've all learned an important lesson today about the power of kindness and understanding." Dr. Brown nodded, his eyes glistening with emotion. "It's been a long journey from that day to this one, Sarah. But seeing everyone come together like this, it feels like we've planted the seeds for real change." As they looked around the now quiet restaurant, Dr. Brown and Dr. Mitchell could see the impact of the day written on every face. The police officers left with a new perspective on their role in the community. The restaurant staff bustled about, energized by the promise of a more inclusive future. And the community members who had attended the clinic departed with not just their medical needs addressed, but with a renewed sense of belonging and hope. As the days passed following the successful clinic, news of Dr. Brown's inspiring story began to spread like wildfire through various media channels and social platforms. Local newspapers ran front-page articles detailing the incident at the restaurant and the subsequent health clinic that emerged from it. Television news stations picked up the story, featuring interviews with Dr. Brown, community members who attended the clinic, and even the police officers involved in the initial confrontation. Social media platforms buzzed with activity as people shared articles and personal reflections on Dr. Brown's experience. Hashtags like Dr. Brown Inspires and Healing Through Kindness started trending, sparking conversations about prejudice, bias, and the power of forgiveness. Dr. Brown found himself at the center of a growing movement, his inbox filled with messages from people across the country who had been touched by his story. Many shared their own experiences of discrimination and expressed how his response had given them hope and courage. Local community leaders reached out to Dr. Brown, inviting him to speak at events and participate in panel discussions on diversity and inclusion. He accepted these invitations, seeing them as opportunities to further the conversation and promote positive change. In one particularly moving interview, Dr. Brown spoke candidly about his feelings during the incident at the restaurant. "I felt humiliated and angry," he admitted, his voice filled with emotion. "But I knew that responding with more negativity wouldn't solve anything. I wanted to show that we can turn painful experiences into chances for growth and understanding." His words resonated with many, inspiring discussions in workplaces, schools, and homes about how to address prejudice and promote inclusivity. People began sharing stories of their own efforts to combat bias in their communities, often citing Dr. Brown's example as their motivation. The restaurant where the incident occurred also received attention. Mr. Thompson, the owner, spoke openly about the changes he was implementing to ensure a more inclusive environment. His willingness to acknowledge past mistakes and work towards improvement was praised by many as a model for other businesses. As the story continued to gain traction, Dr. Brown remained committed to his primary calling, caring for his patients. He approached each day with renewed purpose, knowing that his actions both in and out of the hospital were making a difference in ways he never imagined. Dr. Brown returned to his regular shifts at the hospital, but he quickly noticed that things had changed. As he walked through the hallways, he was met with warm smiles and nods of respect from both patients and colleagues. The atmosphere felt different, charged with a sense of admiration and support that hadn't been there before. One morning, as he settled into his office, Dr. Brown found a stack of letters waiting for him. With curiosity, he opened the first envelope and began to read. Tears welled up in his eyes as he absorbed the heartfelt words of gratitude and encouragement from people who had heard about the clinic and his story. "Dear Dr. Brown," one letter began, "your courage and kindness have inspired me to stand up against injustice in my own community. Thank you for showing us the power of forgiveness and action." As he made his rounds, Dr. Brown noticed that patients were more open with him, sharing not just their medical concerns, but also their personal struggles. Many expressed their admiration for his resilience in the face of discrimination. "Dr. Brown," an elderly patient said, clasping his hand, "what you did with that clinic, turning something bad into something good, it's given me hope. Thank you for that." His colleagues, too, approached him with a new level of respect. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who had helped organize the clinic, noticed the change. "Elijah," she said during a quiet moment, "you've really made an impact. People are talking about bias and inclusivity in ways they never did before." As the days passed, Dr. Brown felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each patient he treated, each life he touched, seemed to carry more weight. He realized that his actions had rippled out far beyond the walls of the hospital, inspiring others to make positive changes in their own lives and communities. The restaurant, once known only for its upscale dining, had become a beacon of change in the community. Mr. Thompson, true to his word, began implementing sweeping changes to transform his establishment into a model of inclusivity and respect. One sunny morning, Mr. Thompson gathered his staff before opening hours. "Today," he announced, his voice filled with determination, "we begin our journey to be better, to do better." He introduced a diversity trainer who would be working with them over the coming weeks. The staff, initially skeptical, found themselves deeply moved by the training sessions. They shared personal stories, confronted their own biases, and learned how to create a more welcoming environment for all patrons. As word spread about the restaurant's transformation, curious diners from all walks of life began to frequent the establishment. The once exclusive atmosphere had given way to a vibrant, diverse crowd that reflected the true spirit of the community. Mr. Thompson didn't stop there. He began organizing regular events aimed at bringing people together. The first was a community dinner, where tables were arranged to encourage strangers to dine together and share their stories. On the night of the inaugural community dinner, the restaurant buzzed with excitement. People from different backgrounds who might never have crossed paths before found themselves breaking bread together. At one table, a young artist shared her dreams with a retired businessman who offered to mentor her. At another, a single mother found support and encouragement from her fellow diners. Laughter and animated conversations filled the air, bridging gaps that had once seemed insurmountable. Mr. Thompson watched it all with a sense of pride and humility. He caught sight of Dr. Brown, who had come to support the event, and approached him. "Dr. Brown," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I can't thank you enough. Your forgiveness and vision have changed not just this restaurant, but our entire community." The police department, shaken by the incident at the restaurant and inspired by Dr. Brown's response, knew they had to take action. Chief Sandra Santos called a meeting with her officers, determined to address the issue head-on. "What happened to Dr. Brown was unacceptable," Chief Santos said, her voice firm but compassionate. "We need to do better. We will do better." Officer Johnson and Officer Martinez, who had approached Dr. Brown at the clinic, stood up. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. "I was there that day. I saw firsthand how our biases can hurt innocent people. We need to change." The chief nodded, grateful for Officer Wilson's honesty. She unveiled a comprehensive plan for diversity and bias training, mandatory for all officers. The room buzzed with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Over the next few weeks, the police force underwent intensive training sessions. They learned about unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and de-escalation techniques. Role-playing exercises put officers in challenging situations, forcing them to confront their own prejudices. Officer Johnson and Officer Martinez, who were involved in Dr. Brown's incident, became unexpected champions for change. They shared their experiences openly, encouraging others to examine their own biases. "I never thought I was prejudiced," Officer Johnson admitted during one session. "But that day at the restaurant opened my eyes. We all have biases, and it's our job to recognize and overcome them." The department also began implementing new policies. They introduced a system of checks and balances for responding to calls involving potential racial bias. Officers were required to have a partner present during questioning and to clearly explain the reason for any interrogation. As the changes took effect, the atmosphere in the department shifted. Officers began to approach their work with a new perspective, more aware of their own biases and more committed to fair treatment for all. Chief Santos watched with pride as her officers embraced the changes. She knew there was still work to be done, but she could see the positive impact already taking shape. Dr. Brown nervously adjusted his tie as he walked into the restaurant. It was strange to be back here, but this time, he was meeting Mr. Thompson with hope in his heart. The restaurant owner greeted him warmly, a far cry from their first encounter. "Dr. Brown, thank you for coming," Mr. Thompson said, gesturing to a quiet corner booth. "I can't tell you how much I appreciate your willingness to work with us after, well, everything." Dr. Brown nodded, settling into his seat. "It's not about dwelling on the past, Mr. Thompson. It's about creating a better future." As they sipped their coffee, the two men began to discuss the success of the recent health clinic. Mr. Thompson's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "The turnout was incredible," he said. "I've been thinking, what if we could do more?" Dr. Brown leaned forward, intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" Mr. Thompson pulled out a folder filled with notes and ideas. "I've been talking to some other local business owners. We all want to be part of the change. What if we expanded the clinic into a larger community health initiative?" Dr. Brown's eyes widened. That's a big idea, Mr. Thompson." "I know," Mr. Thompson replied, his voice filled with determination. "But I think it's necessary. We could partner with local businesses, organizations, maybe even the police department. We could offer regular health screenings, educational workshops, support groups." As Mr. Thompson spoke, Dr. Brown felt a surge of excitement. This was more than he had ever imagined possible. And it's not just about health, Mr. Thompson continued. We want to use this as a platform to keep the conversation going about diversity and inclusion, to show that our community can come together and support each other, regardless of our differences. Dr. Brown nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. We could invite speakers, host community forums. Exactly, Mr. Thompson exclaimed. And we could use my restaurant as a central meeting place, a symbol of how far we've come and how much further we can go. As they continued to brainstorm, Dr. Brown felt a warmth spreading through his chest. What had started as a terrible experience was blossoming into something beautiful and transformative. Mr. Thompson, Dr. Brown said, reaching out to shake the other man's hand, I think we're onto something really special here. As the Community Health Initiative gained momentum, Dr. Brown found himself thrust into the spotlight. Local news stations were the first to pick up the story, fascinated by the tale of a man who turned a painful experience into a catalyst for positive change. One sunny morning, Dr. Brown sat nervously in a brightly lit studio, adjusting his tie as a makeup artist applied a final touch of powder to his forehead. The red light on the camera blinked on, and the interviewer, a friendly woman named Sarah, turned to him with a warm smile. Dr. Brown, thank you for joining us today, she began. Your story has captivated our city. Can you tell us how this all started? Dr. Brown took a deep breath and began to share his experience at the restaurant. As he spoke, he focused not on the hurt or anger he had felt, but on the transformative power of forgiveness and compassion. It would have been easy to respond with bitterness, he explained, his voice steady and sincere. But I realized that would only perpetuate the cycle of misunderstanding. Instead, I chose to see it as an opportunity for growth and healing. The interview aired that evening, and the response was overwhelming. Dr. Brown's inbox was flooded with messages of support and admiration. People from all walks of life were touched by his story and inspired by his message. As word spread, national media outlets began to take notice. Dr. Brown found himself fielding requests for interviews from major networks and newspapers. Each time, he shared his story with humility and grace, always emphasizing the importance of responding to adversity with compassion. It's not about ignoring the pain or pretending it didn't happen, he told a popular morning show host. It's about channeling that pain into something positive. It's about choosing to be part of the solution. Dr. Brown's message resonated deeply with viewers across the country. Social media buzzed with discussions about his story, and the hashtag #ChalkCompassionInAction began trending. As the interviews continued, Dr. Brown noticed a shift in the questions he was asked. Reporters were less interested in rehashing the details of the incident and more focused on the impact of the Community Health Initiative. The first anniversary of the health clinic arrived on a crisp autumn day, the air filled with anticipation and excitement. The restaurant, once the site of a painful incident, had been transformed into a bustling hub of community support and healing. Dr. Elijah Brown stood at the entrance, greeting people with a warm smile and a gentle handshake. The crowd was diverse, a beautiful tapestry of faces from all walks of life. Young families, elderly couples, and individuals of every background streamed through the doors, united by a common purpose. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with activity. Volunteer doctors and nurses manned various stations, offering free checkups, vaccinations, and health advice. The aroma of fresh coffee and pastries, provided by the restaurant, wafted through the air, creating a welcoming atmosphere. As Dr. Brown made his way through the crowd, he couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. A year ago, he had been wrongfully accused and humiliated in this very space. Now, it was a place of hope and unity. He paused for a moment, taking in the scene before him. To his left, he saw Officer Johnson, now off duty, helping an elderly woman fill out her health questionnaire. To his right, Mr. Thompson, the restaurant owner, was cheerfully serving refreshments to waiting patients. Dr. Brown felt a lump form in his throat as he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The pain of that day still lingered, but it had been transformed into something beautiful and meaningful. He thought about all the lives that had been touched, all the conversations that had been started, and all the hearts that had been changed. As he continued his rounds, checking in with volunteers and chatting with patients, Dr. Brown felt a deep sense of fulfillment wash over him. This was more than just a health clinic. It was a testament to the power of forgiveness, compassion, and community. In a quiet moment, Dr. Brown found himself standing in the same spot where he had been confronted by the police a year ago. But instead of feeling humiliation or anger, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace. He had turned a moment of darkness into a beacon of light, not just for himself, but for an entire community. As the afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the restaurant windows, the bustling crowd began to settle into their seats. A hush fell over the room as Mr. Thompson stepped up to the small stage set up in the corner. His eyes glistened with emotion as he cleared his throat and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today not just to celebrate a successful health clinic, but to honor the incredible individuals who turned a moment of darkness into a beacon of hope for our community." Dr. Brown sat in the front row, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He hadn't expected this ceremony, and he felt a mix of humility and pride wash over him. Mr. Thompson continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Elijah Brown, would you please join me on stage?" As Dr. Brown made his way to the stage, the room erupted in applause. He stood beside Mr. Thompson, his usual calm demeanor tinged with visible emotion. "Dr. Brown, your grace and forgiveness in the face of injustice have taught us all a valuable lesson," Mr. Thompson said, placing a hand on Dr. Brown's shoulder. "You've shown us the true meaning of compassion and the power of turning pain into purpose." Tears began to form in Dr. Brown's eyes as he looked out at the sea of faces before him. He saw patients whose lives he'd touched, colleagues who had supported him, and community members who had rallied behind his cause. Next, Mr. Thompson called up the restaurant staff and the police officers involved in last year's incident. They stood on stage, a visible representation of the transformation that had taken place. Officer Johnson stepped forward, his voice wavering as he spoke. "Dr. Brown, I want to publicly apologize again for my actions that day. Your forgiveness and your dedication to making our community better have changed me as a person and as an officer. Thank you for showing us a better way." As Officer Johnson finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The audience was visibly moved, many wiping away tears as they listened to the heartfelt words. Dr. Brown embraced Officer Wilson, a powerful image of reconciliation that brought the room to its feet in a standing ovation. The applause was deafening, filled with the emotion of a community that had witnessed true transformation. As the applause died down, Dr. Brown stepped forward to the microphone. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the man who had turned a moment of injustice into a movement of hope. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the crowd before him. "My friends," he began, his voice soft but clear. "What we've witnessed here today is more than just a celebration. It's a testament to the power of the human spirit." Dr. Brown paused, allowing his words to sink in. "A year ago, I stood in this very restaurant, feeling humiliated and angry. But today, I stand here filled with hope and gratitude." He gestured to the people around him on the stage. "The change we see here didn't happen overnight. It started with a choice to respond to hurt with healing, to meet ignorance with understanding." Dr. Brown's voice grew stronger as he continued. "True change, my friends, begins in the heart. It starts with each one of us looking inward, recognizing our own biases, and choosing to do better." The audience hung on his every word, many nodding in agreement. We all have the ability to make a difference in our community. It doesn't require grand gestures or heroic acts. Sometimes it's as simple as offering a kind word, extending a hand in friendship, or standing up for what's right. Dr. Brown leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with passion. "I challenge each of you here today to continue this work. Build bridges where there are walls. Break down barriers that divide us. Reach out to someone different from you and listen to their story." He paused, letting his words sink in. Change isn't always easy, but it's always possible. And it starts with us. Right here, right now. As Dr. Brown finished his speech, the room erupted into applause once more. People rose to their feet, moved by his words and inspired by his call to action. The energy in the room was palpable, a mix of determination, hope, and unity. As the applause faded and the crowd began to disperse, Dr. Brown found himself surrounded by familiar faces. Mr. Thompson, the restaurant owner, approached him with a warm smile and outstretched hand. "Dr. Brown, Mr. Thompson said, his voice filled with emotion. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done here. You've transformed not just this restaurant, but our entire community." Dr. Brown clasped Mr. Thompson's hand, nodding humbly. "It's been a journey for all of us, Mr. Thompson. We've all grown together." Officer Wilson joined them, his eyes shining with admiration. "Dr. Brown, your words today, they've really hit home. I never thought a simple lunch could lead to all this." The three men shared a knowing look, remembering the incident that had brought them together. But now, instead of tension and misunderstanding, there was a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. Mr. Thompson gestured towards a nearby table. "Gentlemen, why don't we sit down and share a meal? It seems only fitting to end this day breaking bread together." They made their way to the table, joined by Dr. Mitchell and other community members who had been instrumental in the day's events. As they settled into their seats, the aroma of delicious food filled the air. The restaurant, once a place of division, now buzzed with laughter and animated conversation. People from all walks of life sat side by side, sharing stories and dreams for the future. As Dr. Brown looked around the table, he couldn't help but marvel at the scene before him. Here they were, a doctor, a restaurant owner, a police officer, and others from the community, sharing a meal as friends. The very space that had once been the site of his humiliation had become a symbol of unity and healing. Mr. Thompson raised his glass, his eyes misting over. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "And to the power of forgiveness," added Officer Wilson, nodding respectfully towards Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "To our community," he said softly, "and to the good that can come from even the darkest moments." As they clinked their glasses together, the message was clear. This restaurant, once a place of painful memories, had become a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of grace and understanding. Would you have accepted the restaurant staff and police's apology if you were in Dr. Brown's position? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my channel. I am spending hours upon hours writing these heartwarming stories for you, and your support is what keeps me going.